Today we're going to have a quiz, and before we take it, I'm going to review over some of the questions that you might see on your quiz today. So let's start with number 1. And the directions will say, write the equation of the line. Write the equation of a line that goes through these 2 points, and they are -6, -3, and -4, 9. So if I graph those 2 points and I drew my line, I would have a line and I want to find that equation. To find the equation, what are the 2 things we have to find? Well, we have to find the slope m and the y-intercept b. So that's what we're going to do. To find the slope given 2 points, you're going to say your slope is the change in y's over the change in x's. So I'm going to say y minus y. So I say -3 minus 9. And on the bottom, I'm going to do x minus x. So I'm going to take my x's and subtract them. I say -6 minus a -4. And then I'm going to simplify. So my slope would be -3 minus 9. That would be -12. And on the bottom, you see I have double negatives. So those double negatives cancel out. And I have -6 plus 4, which would be -2. So my slope is going to be -12 divided by -2, which is +6. So my slope is +6. Now I have to find b, or the y-intercept. All we know are 2 points and the slope. But if we use this formula, y equals mx plus b, we have a place to put a point in the x and the y, we have a place to put our slope, and then we can solve for b and find our y-intercept. So you get to pick a point. Let's pick a point, and it doesn't matter which one we pick. We'll let this be x and this be y. Okay, so under y in my formula, I am going to put in -3 equals the slope, which is 6 that I just found, times x. And what is my x in that point? It's -6 plus b. So now all I have to do is solve for b, and I will be ready to write my equation. So I have -3 is equal to -36 plus b. Get b by itself. I'm going to add 36 to both sides. And I get b equals 33. So b equals 33. I found my slope m and my y-intercept b, and now I can write the equation. I'm going to use this rule again, and I'm going to substitute in m and b. Y equals m, which is 6, times x plus b, and my b is 33. So there is the equation of a line that goes through these 2 points. So make sure that you could find the slope given 2 points, find b, and then write your equation once you find m and b. Okay, the next page. The next equation, the next problem, they're going to give you a diagram. And it's going to give you some information, and you're going to have to find the missing areas and dimensions. And the directions will say, write the area as a product equal to the area as a sum. So we're going to have a long equation, or long answer. We're going to have 2 sets of parentheses multiplied together equal to a bunch of stuff added together. Okay, so this is what the problem is going to look like. You're going to have a generic rectangle, and they're going to give you some information. So suppose they give you 10x squared right here, and they give you 5x right here. They give you negative 3 here, and they give you negative 1 on the outside. We have to find all of the areas of the empty rectangles, and we have to find the missing dimensions. And once we find that, we can write our equation. We can write our area as a product equal to the area as a sum. So let's start right here and say I need to get 10x squared here, and I already know the 5x is here. What times 5x would give me 10x squared? Well, to change this 5 into 10, I would have to multiply by 2. So I'm going to write it right here. This is my length where 5x is, and my width is where 2 is. But I need one other thing. I have one x here, but I need 2 in the end. So I also need to put another x here. And check yourself. Length times width would be 2x times 5x would be 10x squared. So then I know I'm right. Okay, now let's take the lengths that we already know and let's fill in where they're the same length. If this is 2x from here to here, then it's also 2x on this side. And if this is 5x here, then it's also 5x on this side. And if this is negative 1 down here, it's also negative 1 up here. Okay, now, because I did that, I can now find the area of this rectangle. What is 5x times negative 1? That would be negative 5x. That's the area of that rectangle. I know that this side is negative 1, and I know my area is negative 3. What times negative 1 would give me negative 3? What do I need? I need a 3. So 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Well, if this is a 3 here, then it's also going to be a 3 on this side. So to find my final area, I'm going to multiply 2x times 3, and that's going to give me 6x. Now you'll notice that all of my dimensions are filled in and all of my rectangles are filled in. So now I'm ready to write my equation. I am going to have my length times my width. So in parentheses, I would write 5x plus 3 when I add those together. And then on this one, parentheses, I would have 2x minus 1. That is the area as a product. Length times width is the total area. But if I look at the inside, each one of these little rectangles, if I added them together, I would also find the total area by adding up all the areas of the smaller rectangles. So we're going to add those together. We're going to start with the 10x squared. And if you'll notice that 6x and negative 5x are like terms, so we can go ahead and add those together. 6x and minus 5x would be plus 1x, or just x. And then the only other thing I haven't put in there yet is my negative 3. So now you can see that I have the area as a product equal to the area as a sum. And that is what they asked for, so I'm finished. Okay, next problem. On this one, the directions will say multiply. And they'll actually say more than that. I'm not going to write it all down. But it's going to say multiply, and it's going to say use distributive property, or you can use generic rectangles. Well, for today, I'm going to go ahead and just use distributive property. If you like to use generic rectangles, feel free to do it that way. That is perfectly fine on the quiz. I don't care how you do it. All right, so this is number 3. We're going to multiply a monomial times a binomial. Now, we reviewed how to do all of this on Tuesday, so hopefully this is all reviewed for you guys. All right, so a monomial times a binomial, we're going to take this monomial and we're going to distribute it to everything on the inside of the parentheses. So what is negative 4x squared times 5x? That would be negative 20. And then when I multiply my like bases together, I have 2x's here and I have 1x here, so I have a total of 3 x's when I multiply those together. Then I take my negative 4x and I multiply by negative 3. Negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 3 is 12, and my x squared does not change. Notice that those are not like terms, so I cannot combine them together, and I am finished. I multiplied using distributive property. If you choose to do a generic rectangle, you would do a 1 by 2. Number 4, same directions. This time, I'm going to have a binomial times another binomial. Basically, I'm going to do the same thing I did on number 3, except for I'm going to distribute twice. I'm going to take this m and I'm going to distribute it to everything that's inside the second parentheses. So m times m would be m squared, and m times negative 6 would be negative 6m, and I'm halfway done. I'm now going to take this positive 8 and I'm going to distribute it to everything in the second set of parentheses. So positive 8 times m is positive 8m, and positive 8 times negative 6 is negative 48. Collect like terms. I get m squared plus 2m, because these are like terms, I can combine them together, minus 48. And I have my trinomial answer. So those two problems you're going to multiply using distributive property, or you could use generic rectangles. If I use generic rectangle on this one, I would do a 2 by 2 rectangle. Okay, continuing. This time we're going to solve an equation, and the directions are going to say solve for x. Make sure you show all your work. This is number 5. If you have negative 1 plus 6x plus 8 equal negative 10x plus 41 minus x. We are just going to solve. Now we don't have any parentheses to get rid of, so we're going to collect like terms on both sides. That's our first step. So over here I have 6x, and I have negative 1 plus 8, so that would be plus 7. Equals, on the other side, I have negative 10x and a minus x. So when I add those together, I get a negative 11x. My 41 does not change. Okay, I have simplified each side as far as I can. Now I need to move all my x's to the left-hand side. So I'm going to add my 11x to both sides. And I get 17x plus 7 is equal to 41. Then I move my numbers over. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. I get 17x is equal to 41 minus 7, which is 34. When I divide by when I divide by 17 on both sides, my 17's cancel, and I have x equals 2. 34 divided by 17 is 2. And there is my answer. Solving an equation for x. Okay, the last 3 problems are all kind of the same. So we're going to have one set of directions, and we are going to simplify with exponents. So let's do those next. The directions will say simplify. And let's see, let's start with this one, number 6. Suppose you have x to the negative 10th power. Now there's not a lot to this one, but I know in my other classes that I still have people that are having trouble with this. If you have a negative exponent, it is not simplified. So you have to get rid of that negative exponent. And do you remember what we do to get rid of a negative exponent? Well, if that happens to be on top, which in this case it is because you don't see a fraction, that is going to be equal to, you're going to take this and you're going to move it to the bottom of the fraction. And when you do, you have to put it under 1. So you move it to the bottom and you make it positive. And you're done. That is your answer. So to get rid of a negative exponent, if it's on top, you move it to the bottom and make it positive. If it was on the bottom, you would move it to the top and make it positive. For example, if I had this 1 over x to the negative 8, if I wanted to get rid of that negative exponent, I would move it to the top and make it positive. And that's all there is to it. Okay, number 7. Suppose you have w to the 4th power divided by w to the 12th. Okay, here we are dividing like bases. So we can actually do this problem 2 ways. Now, some of you might like to do the subtracting exponent way. That is not my first choice, but I'll work it that way first before I work it the way that I would work it. If you like to say, well, I'm dividing like bases, so I'm going to subtract my exponents, I would say, all right, I have w to the 4 minus 12. Top minus the bottom. And then, when I simplify that, I get w to the negative 8. Now, we ended up with a negative exponent like we had up above. So how do I get rid of that negative 8 exponent? I move it to the bottom, and I make it positive. And I'm done. Now, the way I like to do it, and let me change colors here just so it stands out a little bit. What I like to do is I like to cancel. If I see that I have a fraction like this, I like to draw my fraction bar and then say, okay, where are most of my w's? I have 12 w's on the bottom and I have 4 on top. So I know when I cancel these out, I'm going to have more w's that are left on the bottom. I'm not going to have any left on the top. So if I have 4 w's on top and 12 on the bottom and I cancel out 4 w's, how many would I have left on the bottom? Well, if you subtract 12 and 4, you get 8. You have 8 left over. So the way I would show that is I'd say, okay, I'm going to cancel out these 4 w's, and how many would I have left on the bottom? I would have 8. And so my answer would be 1 is on top over w to the 8. And isn't that the same answer that I got here when I used my rule? So I like to do canceling. Notice I didn't even have to mess with any negatives. I just canceled and I got the right answer. So just think about it. Say, where are most of my w's? So my final answer, the w's are going to be on the bottom because there's more w's on the bottom than on the top. All right. Let's go on to number 8. And this is also the final problem. Suppose you have 12 x to the 6th y divided by 24 x squared y to the 6th. I want to simplify this big fraction. Now, whenever I have a big fraction like this, what I like to do is I like to draw a big fraction bar. And I'm just going to put everything where it goes. Now, I'm actually going to use the canceling method like I did up here in red. If you like to subtract your exponents, you are more than welcome to do it that way. But let me show you my way first. And then if you want me to do it the other way, I can do that. All right, so first of all, we look at this fraction right here. We have 12 on top and 24 on the bottom. So if you think of that as just one fraction, that is going to simplify, and our bigger number, or the number, is going to be left on the bottom. So how many times does 12 go into 24? Well, it goes in 12 times. So 12 goes into 12 one time, and it goes into 24 2 times. So I have 1 on top, which you can write the 1. In fact, I'll go ahead and write the 1 there. So you can see that 12 over 24 simplifies to 1/2, because 12 is half of 24. Okay, now look at your x's. Your x's, where are most of your x's? Most of your x's are on top, so we know the x's are going to be on top, the ones that are left over. If I cancel out 2 x's from both the top and the bottom, how many would I have left on top? Well, you could just think it in your head, well, that's 4 x's, or you could say that's 6 minus 2, and that would give me 4. So, because I'm canceling out 2 x's here and I'm taking 2 x's out here, I have 4 left over here. So I'm going to write x to the 4. Then I look at my y's. Where are most of my y's? My y's, mostly, there's 6 of them on the bottom and only 1 on top. So I know my y's are going to end up on the bottom. And if I cancel out one y, how many do I have left on the bottom? I have 5. So I have 5 x's here. Now you can leave your answer like that, or you can go one more step and say that's x to the 4th over 2y to the 5th. Now, for those of you who like to do the subtracting of exponents, you could say my 12 over 24 reduces to 1/2. Then I have x to the 6 minus 2 and y to the 1 minus 6. And simplify. So that's going to be x to the 4th, y to the negative 5, all over 2. You'll notice that you have this negative exponent that you can't leave. So you're going to move it to the bottom. So you have x to the 4th divided by 2, and when you move this down to the bottom, you have y to the positive 5, because when you move it to the bottom, you make it positive. Notice that I got exactly the same answer that I had up here. I think myself this way is easier because I didn't have to ever deal with negative exponents. I just thought of it in my head as canceling. But it's totally up to you which way you do it. Okay? Well, that's the kind of problems that you'll see on our quiz today. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to put your notes away, put everything else away. I'd like you to put your phone in your backpack, and I would like you to put your backpack against the wall. Make sure you spread out. Those of you who usually move to the empty tables, please do that. Put up your folders, and you may use a calculator on this, but you cannot use your cell phone. So just make sure that that's all put away. And that is all for today.